Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked what you thought of the 5th episode of Ahsoka. As usual, I'll also be reading and responding to some of the comments left on that poll. And so let's waste no time and get right to the results, where we'll see that 61% of voters thought this episode was awesome, 22% then said it was pretty good, 9% believed it to be mid or average, which left 3% to go with it wasn't very good, and then a final 5% who thought it was terrible. And so when we compare it to the results for last week's episode, we will see that we are still on an upward trend, and that this has been, according to those voting in these polls at least, this is the best episode yet. With even a couple of percentage points moving up and out of those bottom two choices this time, meaning either people not watching and rating it poorly regardless, they didn't vote this time, or that some who maybe weren't enjoying those first few episodes were indeed impressed with this one. Though I do hope not to be in any way pessimistic here, but I do hope we haven't peaked at the mid-season point. I hope these final 3 episodes and what should almost certainly be the live-action introduction of Thrawn, not to mention finding Ezra, I hope that all can deliver and close out the season with a bang and potentially be the best Star Wars we've got on Disney Plus thus far, and a step in the right direction for Disney Star Wars overall. And a step that way before we get Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte, which are, in my opinion, pretty big question marks right now. I'm not sure what to think or feel about either one of them, to be honest, though, in all fairness, we haven't heard much about either one of them just yet. Especially Skeleton Crew, it seems, which is kind of odd because that is supposed to be the next one up. It is supposed to come out, or was supposed to come out later this year. But if the rumors are true, it has been pushed back thanks to the writer and actor strike, and we shouldn't expect it till sometime next year now. Alright, and now let's move on to some comments, but not before once again just saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these, or any of my videos across both channels. It is all very much appreciated. Also a huge thank you to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon. And now, as always, we will kick it off with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from Content Corsair, who said, I think it was the first episode that felt like Ahsoka was the main character and not Sabine, so that's good. I think it's the best one so far. And yeah, it was maybe kinda nice not to get any Sabine in this episode and to be reminded of the fact that this is very much the Ahsoka series, though I don't think that should automatically mean that just because you're not the titular character that you can't shine or be featured to any degree whatsoever. I'm certainly not mad about Sabine getting a story here and some love overall. And I wouldn't be mad to see, say, Thrawn get some love either. I'm hoping to get quite a bit of him in these final 3 episodes, but I have my doubts. I think it might take a while to find him just yet. And I've talked a lot before about how I almost wish these Disney Star Wars shows would stop using character names for the title of the show. That I can't help but feel like they're doing themselves a disservice, and they'd be better off with more vague and generic titles, yet at the same time perhaps more interesting or eye-catching Star Wars-like titles, like we've almost always got before out of George Lucas and some of the more generic names he's gone with, like Attack of the Clones. Generic name, but certainly gets you more interested than if you had called it Count Dooku, for example. Andor is also a great example of what I'm talking about here, that it's a name that means virtually nothing to most people, but something like Star Wars The Dark Times, though yes, very generic, it's likely to get more interest from people than a character name they've never heard of or just don't remember. Just like Ahsoka is a character that not a ton of people, if we're being honest, not a ton of people outside the fandom have ever heard of her, much less know all that much about her and want to watch a show just because they hear the name. Either way, let's now move on to this comment from MGO Snake Liquid, who said, The Anakin and Ahsoka scenes were all amazing. The more I've analyzed Anakin's final lesson, the more I understand it. He was teaching her that living for survival alone wasn't enough, and it's why she lost to Baylan. She had to want to live, unencumbered by the baggage of her past, mostly left by him. This was the real redeemed Anakin Skywalker returning to her. This wasn't a hallucination or imagination. Dark Anakin never existed, and in the end, Ahsoka didn't defeat Darth Vader, she passed Anakin's lesson. Anakin didn't want to kill or hurt Ahsoka, he came for the opposite. This episode had me the most excited for Star Wars I've been in the entirety of Disney's era, with the exception of the final season of Clone Wars, which was really a relic of Lucas Star Wars, or Season 2's Luke finale of Mando. Hayden, Rosario, and the young actress playing Ahsoka hit this out of the park, and I really want a Tales of the Jedi with a live-action Anakin and Ahsoka during the Clone Wars. Final rating, 9.5 out of 10. And though, yeah, I've seen a lot of people saying, and I've certainly said it myself, but I do think the final lesson from Anakin could have been a bit more clear. Though that said, I certainly think you're getting to the heart of the matter here. I think there's a lot of things we could potentially take away from what Anakin was trying to teach Ahsoka here. But a part of it, I think, is almost this sort of mirror between Ahsoka and Anakin, which is kind of what you're getting at here. And them truly wanting to be a Jedi or not, that you have to remember it is a hard life. And that it's not something you can just go through the motions and do, like Ahsoka has sort of been doing for a while now, it seems, or like it feels like in this show. It doesn't feel like she wants to be a Jedi, as you can't do it for the wrong reasons either, like Anakin did with him wanting to become the most powerful Jedi ever, or to go back and free all the slaves, which, no, that's not a bad thing. But Anakin wanted to be a Jedi for personal reasons, not so much because he really wanted to help people, and he ended up failing. He ended up maybe being a little resentful that the Jedi didn't let him do what he wanted to do. While for Ahsoka, it's almost the opposite. She wants to detach herself from any and all of it, it seems, to find no joy in it whatsoever, and to just be a Jedi because that is what she does. That is what she is supposed to be. But to be a Jedi, you have to want to live this life. You have to want it. You have to have compassion and love. And it's like she's lost all that because it seems like that's what led Anakin to the dark side, right? He wanted too much love in his life. And so she finds no joy in any of it, and according to Lucas, that's what the Jedi get out of it. They get joy out of it, knowing that their life has this profound meaning, that they're helping all these people, and it doesn't seem like she really wants to help as much as she feels like this is what I have to do. In other words, to try to simplify it as much as I can, I think you have to want to be a Jedi above anything and everything else, or you're going to fail at it. And you have to accept anything and everything that might go along with being a Jedi. You have to want to live this type of life that might call for you to be a simple keeper of the peace, or it might call for you to be a 14-year-old child soldier. You don't get to pick or choose which one you get or will be needed for, but you have to be willing and ready to be and embrace either one of them. Okay, and let's now move on to this comment from Harkov Fol, who said, "A great episode, some fantastic saber combat, and seeing Hayden back was nice. I also enjoyed the subtle callbacks, like Ahsoka saying, 'I won't fight you,' and Anakin replying, 'I've heard that before,' echoing the Luke-Vader interaction in Return of the Jedi. And yeah, all around I thought Hayden looked great. Not perfect, but great, and hadn't lost anything when it came to his saber skills. Certainly he was on point here when it came to all that. I also do think 100% that it was the real Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker. And I've seen a lot of people not only doubting this, but almost adamantly against it. Like they don't want it to be the real Anakin, and I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, as this comment points out, I'm not sure how or why Ahsoka is subconscious, if that's all it really is. I don't know how it would know certain things about Anakin at this point, like the whole "I will not fight you" thing from Return of the Jedi. And so I really think this is Filoni's way of telling us, without flat out just saying directly to us, that this is the real Anakin Skywalker, that he's not going to introduce himself as the Force ghost of Anakin to us. And I almost ask, why would you not want it to be him? Which again seems to be the case for some of us out there. I've seen some fans again kind of angry at the implication that this would even be the real Anakin, which then also includes the idea that she would be in the real world between worlds as well. A lot of people just want this whole thing to be nothing more than a dream sequence, and again, I'm not sure why. Moving on now, our next comment comes to us from Black Benton, who said, "Almost perfect. My one gripe would be budget issues. I feel they should have shown more Mandalore during the siege, as well as some of the fallen clone faces. Seems as though a lot of the money was used on Hayden's de-aging, which looked incredible. And even though I really do think it all works, what they did with the Clone Wars flashbacks, that you could call it anything from fog of war to a haze around Ahsoka's memories, it does end up looking a little cheap though, and I do wish they'd put a bit more money into it and really done it up right. Or maybe just pick one of the worlds like Mandalore and put all the money into that one and do it right. I just think it would have been incredible to get a live action look at the sort of entirety of that battle and to really remind people, those who have never watched Clone Wars, just how massive this war really was." Next up, we have this comment from NIS Gard, who said, "Mid. The show is not bad, it's just not really doing it for me either. I feel there's so much potential on screen, I just wish it would have a bit more energy in the dialogue and direction. Still hanging on to see Thrawn in live action, hope he'll turn things around for me." And I do think you're about to get a lot more energy out of Ahsoka in the back half of the season now. I think they almost went a bit too stoic and grim with her in the first half just to make the point or make it obvious when she becomes Ahsoka the White that she has been sort of reborn. Problem is, for a lot of people, those not overly familiar with this character, you don't know why she is this way. I almost feel like the show could have benefited from what they've done before with some of these shows, where it began with a flashback recap sequence that went over some of the key moments in their history or their backstory. But it was like they didn't want to do that because they wanted to save the return of Hayden Christensen for something more profound and epic, not kick off the season with him and then sort of ruin the surprise of it all later on. Alright, and our next comment then comes to us from Shaadius, who said, "My favorite parts were Huyang lamenting the loss of Sabine and Ahsoka, and then Jason's use of the Force. Somehow the Force is so much more special when it's used subtly and with some mystery about it." And Jason and the lightsabers on the ocean waves and Hera potentially hearing it was yet another thing I've seen some people debating or even a little angry about. A lot of people do not like this idea of anyone can use the Force, and for the most part I'm kind of in that boat too. Even though yes, everyone has the Force in them, I'm not arguing or upset about that part. But I don't know that you can teach everyone or anyone how to use it, even to a small degree. Though that said, I really don't know that Hera was just hearing the waves on her own or had learned how to use the Force spontaneously, as much as Jason was helping her hear them, a sort of mind trick type thing, if you will. Either way, I don't have a problem with this scene in general. I liked the subtlety of it and how they're showing people that Jason is indeed very Force sensitive, that things come naturally to him, whereas you have Sabine, who is actively trying to learn how to use the Force, but struggles with the most basic of things. And so in a way, they're reiterating the importance of Force sensitivity while also expanding the idea of who can use the Force. That it is open to anyone theoretically, but not just anyone is ever going to get good at it. That even someone as talented as Sabine will struggle to do the most basic things with it. And then at the same time, you also have this child who just accidentally falls into it in a way. Alright, and now time for a few final comments before wrapping it up, starting with this one from Joshua Manway, who said, "It blended the prequels and originals so beautifully. Seeing Hayden in his Clone Wars armor was beautiful, the de-aging for once was commendable, and seeing Vader without the suit was actually far more terrifying than him in it. Hayden pulling out all his old moves was also beautiful. It is the best Star Wars, bar Andor, since Revenge of the Sith for me. Seeing Ahsoka the White regain some of her old personality was very encouraging too." We also then have this comment from Simon Yesh, who said, "I really enjoyed this one. The only little complaint I had was just wanting more of Anakin and Ahsoka, a longer reunion, reconciliation, and some answers. Besides that and wanting sharper pacing, it was pretty good." Then we have this one from Tear You Apart, who said, "I loved it. It also helps people better visualize just how young Ahsoka was when she basically became a child soldier." Then there's this one from Istari, who said, "The show has gone to a new and much better level the past 2 episodes. Will it keep it up? I am still cautiously optimistic, but I am tilting towards greater optimism at this point." Our next one then comes to us from John2001+, who said, "I enjoyed episode 4 more, but episode 5 was for the most part pretty good. Ahsoka's vision was good, but a little more routine and bland than my expectations. I expected something more grand, something bigger than Ahsoka resolves her personal feelings. It has been my theory that we have not yet seen the scene from Rebels in live action. There will be a second attempt to find Ezra." And finally, this comment from Jedi Master MJ, who said, "It was so good to see Hayden back. Him being in this was more fulfilling than Obi-Wan." Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this latest episode of the Ahsoka series, or tell me what you think of what I or anyone else had to say about it here in this video. Whatever you choose to do though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.